Hi, I'm Shari with OLTD. We all know what it's like when we don't feel safe in a conversation. We might feel judged, we might get shut down, we can tell if someone's not really present, if they're not really listening with us, and we definitely know when all they're doing is waiting to interrupt or just jumping in and interrupting and making it about them. In other words, taking the story away from us. And we've all been part of that kind of conversation where somebody's whole point becomes trying to convince us that they're right, that the way they see the world is the only way that the world can be seen. And that definitely shuts us down. All of these examples are the opposite of making it safe. They're the opposite of listening with empathy. All right, so how do we create a safe environment and listen with empathy? I think one of the best ways that we can do this is by listening with curiosity. Listening as if we have something to discover, something that we didn't know before, because of course we all do. Another idea comes from the authors of Crucial Conversations. They say if you're going to go into a conversation that might be difficult, ask yourself first what your real motives are. What do you want? What's your goal in this conversation? Are you hoping to share your ideas and your perspective? Are you hoping that the other person will be convinced that you're right? Or do you really want to know what it's like from somebody else's perspective, how they see the world? Be real with yourself, because the answer to the question about your motives will change the entire outcome of the conversation. A long time ago, I took a class called Listening Skills, Get Yourself Out of the Way. I've never forgotten that title because it so perfectly explains one of the biggest obstacles to listening effectively. And that is that our own thoughts, our own opinions, our own emotions keep bubbling up and making it hard for us to really hear the other person. Our brains run so fast and we are so immersed in our own stories and our own lives that before we even know it, we've tuned the other person out. We're thinking about other things. We might be making assumptions. We might be jumping to conclusions. We might be getting really caught up in our own emotional response to whatever they're saying. And before we realize it, without even noticing, we haven't been listening. If you saw Brené Brown's Netflix special, The Call to Courage, you've heard her say, the story I'm telling myself is. And that's because we tell ourselves stories that get in the way of understanding all the time. I'll never forget this one time it happened. I teach dance classes at a community center, and sometimes I think the most important thing that happens in those classes is not even about dance, but it's about the camaraderie, the laughter, the warmth, the support that we create for each other there. So this one time, a new person joined the class, like happens all the time, and instead of joining in, she stayed apart. So she didn't laugh when other people were laughing. She didn't get pulled into conversation even though folks tried to include her. She just stayed apart the whole time. So like Brené Brown talks about, I told myself a story. I got caught up all in my emotions, right? She didn't like my class. She didn't like me. I wasn't a good enough teacher. She was judging us. Then on the very last night of a session, after the whole thing was over, she came to me and she said, you know, my husband recently died. And the reason I joined this class was I needed some kind of distraction to distract me from the pain. And I just want to thank you for being there for me week after week. Your class was the thing that kept me going. It's such a huge reminder that we tell ourselves stories every day that get in the way of understanding. And without getting ourselves out of the way, we're not going to be able to listen with empathy. And that means putting away our phones, suspending our judgment and the assumptions that we naturally make, actively working to understand another person's experience and perspective. And that goes back to what is my motive in even having this conversation to begin with. Also, remember your facial expression, your voice tone, your body language. I'm really extroverted, and sometimes when I'm really concentrating, listening hard, my face kind of scrunches up, which might look like disapproval. So I've had to learn to be very aware of what's going on over here. And of course, we want to ask open-ended questions and listen. Be prepared to hear something that might be unexpected or different than what we might believe. That is listening with curiosity and with an open heart and an open mind. It's one of the biggest gifts that we can give another person, and it's totally free. All it takes is you.